and welcome to TBD TTRPG podcast. I'm Brian the Bard, and I'm joined by
Thank
Chief.
you. Our podcast is here to help you with your adventures from both sides of the table, players and dungeon masters.
This week we're going to take a look at gaming on a budget. How to run your game when your coin purse is tight. Game these days, things can be tight, and you may not have the kind of investment to fully purchase a module or fully invest into a game system, but you still want to play.
Growing up, I hadn't been introduced to it as much as you had. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about your experience growing up.
Well, I primarily played in 3.5. We played a lot of Star Wars D20. And back then, I didn't have the resources as we do now. I mean, all the players are connected on computers. If we play in person, we would have computers or our phones with us. We would have the resources on hand, but sometimes you don't have that. And that's completely fine. These games are meant to be played however you need to play it. You don't need a full battle map and tokens and minis. They're fun. They're great to buy. They're not a necessity.
For me, it's mostly been role playing that I've used for most of my gaming. And now with D&D Beyond, we have that. Or when I was playing Pathfinder, they had resource documents that were available to get to use a lot of that to get information.
Oh, absolutely. I've one time gamed in a group that had the DM provided small little laptops and with the SRD loaded up. Like already, when you turn it on, here's all the information, here's how to search it. And that was great. But we all can't afford laptops for our players. So things you could do, you may not even need a battle map. A lot of role playing games can be done as what we call theater of the mind.
And that really calls back to the origin of storytelling, which
Mhm.
is using your imagination, really thinking things through. Tell us a little bit more
Absolutely.
about that, about theater of the
Well,
mind.
well, that's it's kind of a joke at this point, but that's usually when we're not doing battle maps. We're not doing tokens. We may have a regional map, which is helpful for guidance and cluing, which could be a hand-drawn map, which I've done before. You can maybe even take some lessons from map making and get some books, rent them at a library if you need to, or just search online for the information of how to make maps. It's quick, it's easy, and it'll be a good lesson to learn for making your games. After that, you can homebrew. You don't need to buy a licensed published game to have fun. Make your own world, adapt a world. Maybe you know Forgotten Realms, but you want to go off the beaten path. That's completely fine. It's your game and always your table, first and foremost.
I've done some homebrewing myself, mostly in terms of a campaign setting. When I had first started jamming, I had actually had a little small city, but then I realized I didn't really have enough experience. So I used Pathfinder to drop it into an existing world, and there I was able to expand outwards. But not everyone had that opportunity at the time. Maybe you had just basically books that you could read, or you had just your imagination.
For reference for battles, I've used chessboards before and chess pieces and went, this guy's this guy, this guy's you. Let's do this. I've used drawn maps, graph papers, cheap. You go to Walmart or wherever, buy some graph paper, graph it out. Use pennies, use tokens.
Use
Uh,
cardboard pieces.
yeah. Even these days, it's way easier because you can find free resources. Not only there are multiple Reddit subs for battle maps of people posting their works, there's also resources elsewhere of making your own that the may just be enough. Now, I will
Mhm.
always say, people out there, if you have the capability to support artists, definitely do. If you see something on itch.io, which is a great resource for battle maps as well, or Reddit or Patreon, please try to support these people if you can. If you can't,
Or share them.
yes. But ultimately, you don't need all these expensive resources. They help, they make things easier. But if you want to put the time into it, you can work it all out yourself without paying hundreds of dollars.
Yeah, it depends on how much time. Time is an important factor. Ultimately, what you need to focus on is having fun. Fun during play and during preparation as much as possible. The
Absolutely.
simpler it is, the better it can be.
Absolutely. Speaking from experience, once the game becomes no longer fun, it's not a healthy game. It's much better to have no game than a bad game. I know I've been in myself in bad groups and hard situations of games. It's just not fun. It takes all the glory out of it. So try to find the balance you need is the key to it.
If you need to drop from a group, you can do so. Just make sure to communicate with the group, at least the DM, your reasoning for it. Just that way they can understand where you're coming from. And that gives you the opportunity in the future to possibly come back. Maybe it's just not the right time in your life.
Absolutely. So gaming on the cheap. Like I said, there's many resources online. Roll20 and Foundry both are very good VTTs, virtual tabletops, that are free. They have Foundry has a demo version that's limited, but it is free. And Roll20, we have our game on free.
Yep.
You could pay for a subscription, and that opens up a lot of resources, or you don't have to. I know personally on Roll20, if you want to add maps, it's fairly easy. You can make your campaign completely on there without paying a dime. You do have to put the time in, but that's up to you.
Or you can keep things minimally and just draw things in or make the players do it themselves.
Absolutely. Yeah, those are possibilities. Now, if you do want to buy a published game, let's say your group settles on one, there are plenty. Dungeons and Dragons has a lot out there by now. What I recommend is looking to add to it. Don't keep it exactly the way it is. It's your group, so it's your recipe, so to speak.
One of the ways you could do that is if it's very socially oriented, maybe you could find a bit more ways to spice up combat or just to take characters into a new kind of setting. So if they intend for you to meet up in a castle, you could instead meet in a grove of trees.
A lot of our games I've ran for our party, I've done things out of order or out of the way the book told me to because it didn't make sense narratively, it didn't flow the right way, it didn't seem the way to work. I've added maps, I've added combat encounters. I even tell you guys every time, like, oh, this is an added scene. Like to think of it as a DLC.
I know one of our other players, he from time to time adapts older editions encounters to the current edition and utilizes it in his games. He doesn't tell us, but occasionally he'll tell us later when something's like that. And it gets another layer of flavor, but because each edition has their own way of feeling, I guess. And
Absolutely.
they
This is something we are discussing off air about, but how older games had more of a dungeon crawl, less of a narrative to it, while the newer games seem to have a more narrative to it and less of a dungeon crawl.
the game developed from the course of the characters that were surviving. And there was a survivor bias that came because of it, where the story comes from that, from those group of adventurers who really came from nothing. Where current editions, they're already heroic from the start, or at least very tough to kill. Uh,
I will point out in AD&D back in the day, there was a possibility that your fighter could have 2 hit points at level 1.
and
It's
it probably wouldn't last long.
nope, nope. I played a
But
game where a wizard had 4 hit points and died in the first combat alone, and the player was like, "Alright, make it a new character."
that really goes to the philosophy of the old school renaissance of older editions, which was it wasn't as much about the fighting, it was about the treasure of being able to get to something and getting it out
Mhm.
without getting yourselves killed as best as possible. So it meant a lot of avoiding combat or at least circumventing it to focus on the what got you levels, which was the gold, the treasure.
Absolutely, and now with 5th edition, we use the milestone system for XP. So you level up as the narrative unfolds.
Or the DM says so.
Hey, I know when's a good time to level up.
That is true. That is true.
I actually do like milestone way better than XP. XP was always a pain to calculate out, and as a DM, I would
Mhm.
often forget, "Oh, you guys have enough to level up. Okay, let's do a level up thing." Well, now I can be like, "Okay, guys, you're gonna level up after this bit, and then after these
Mhm.
things." Like, it feels structured.
Yes. Yes. It definitely is more structured now. Something else we do in campaigns, or at least something that you can, is be inspired by things you've seen or read and then apply them to the games that you have. One time I ran a game where there was like this book about these snowmen that take kids to a snow castle and they have fun there. I adapted that into a Monster of the Week where the snowmen weren't actually evil. There was another group of creatures that were attacking, that were preventing the kids from leaving.
If it was that one, that was a good game. The one I'm thinking of. You try to get the inspiration from where you can, and I always joke I'm stealing from it. So, for example, I one time ran a game and I stole, of all places, from Stargate Universe and had a whole time travel concept that worked well, where I foreshadowed a lot of events and then the players ended up acting out those events and then
Mhm.
realized that they're in a time loop and they just did exactly everything I predicted.
That takes some skill there for sure. But being able to reframe once again, taking, Stargate or some other series you really like, adapting parts of it into your campaign can be really invigorating. Anything that you create is you may have parts of things that you've been exposed to in the past, whether you intend to or not.
I was thinking about this exact thing and how various movies can work as slasher flicks, how I could steal from each movie to work in the game system slash slasher flick. So Deep Blue Sea would be a great one. The shark is a monster.
You keep it simple. Giant shark. What else? What else do you need?
Yeah, I know. What was some other ones that I
Waterworld.
Waterworld would be an interesting one. Maybe not Monster of the Week, but definitely a apocalypse game.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of options out there in terms of being free. Everything's just a search away on the internet. As long as you're not just kind of publish it as your own and just kind of make money off it, there's just for your private little group, things are
That
pretty much on the table.
and like I said, if you have the resources to support people, please do. This is a difficult hobby. People just trying to survive out there.
Mhm. Yeah, I
If
think we're pretty good right now. So follow us for more to come. And in our next episode, we'll be checking some other things out for you guys.
and have a great adventure out there.
All right. Signing off, TBD ETRPG podcast.
Okay.